Okay, we're just getting ready to do a horizontal SMAW. This test, the CWB test, is done with a smaller gap, as you might notice. We've also, when we stamped our numbers, we've got our numbers 1, 2, 3, that's our coupons. And then on top of that, the number 2. The number 2 is our horizontal position. So it's a number 2 position. This weld has no stop and start in the first pass, but a stop and start in the second pass. We only have to do one stop. Okay? So Carly's gonna do the welding this time. She's gonna go through, all the way through the first weld. We've got the machine set at, what, 128?
128.
Okay, 128, and our arc force is at 30. So let's give this a shot and see how it goes.
Okay, so I like to start quite back here so that we have a nice puddle going into leading into our groove. And come in at a nice 45-degree angle. It's almost like, exactly like your first pass of your flat groove weld. Are you ready? Watch your eyes. You can get yourself set up on a nice angle right before you get in that joint. It feels like it's not on enough. I want my puddle to go probably a 6 from the edge of the top plate. The top toe of my weld to be a 16th from the top bevel. And I keep welding right until my puddle gets outside of the groove. Make full use of the runoff tabs.
Okay, so it went in pretty good. We've left enough room for when we do our second weld. So that should clean up pretty good.
There we go. Don't start hacking at the... Pause it. Okay, so I've done the first pass here on this horizontal fillet weld, and you have to make sure that you keep a really tight arc to make sure there's no undercut on the top edge of the weld. And we're gonna have to make sure there's a really tight arc pretty much all the time that you're welding horizontal with stick. And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna do the second pass, and I'm gonna have more of like an upward pointing rod, almost like you're welding overhead when you put the second pass in. The idea here is that you have a nice 45-degree weld, and then when we put our second pass in, gravity is going to kind of, you're going to point up a little bit more, but gravity is going to kind of bring the puddle down, so it ends up being completely flush once we get the second pass in there. And we also need to have a stop and start on our second pass. So I'm going to place this little rod here so that when I know exactly where to stop. So that's going to be right in the middle of our last plate.
The other thing that can be helpful with horizontal is try to approach this with it at your eye level or just a little bit above, and that'll help. You'll have better luck that way of making sure that your rod angle.
And you don't want to be pointing
good.
up either. You want to be pointing like almost straight on with maybe a 5-degree inclination. Like, oh, this is moving around a little bit. You don't want to be, when you come in to do your cap, you don't want to be pointing up. But this pass here, we want to point up on. I got myself there. Okay, are you ready? You ready?
Ready. It's a really tight arc. Don't go too quickly.
Nice and slow.
That rod's going to be scrubbing against the plate the whole time. Okay, there we are at the stop. So that went in pretty good. On all of your horizontal CWB testing, you can expect there to only be one stop.
There's Hobart slag.
Okay, so that one stop's going to be on your second pass all the time. We'll let this get cleaned off. We'll have a close look at it and see how the profile is. So ideally, you want this to be nice and flat. So there we go. That's dialed in pretty good. That's exactly what we want. Okay, now the bend that you have, that's going to be where your stop and start is, so it's critical you do a good restart and get in there nice and tight. You can see there's no spatter anywhere. That's because the arc is really tight. If you come back and have a little bit of a long arc here, you're going to have nothing but trouble. So this one worked out well. Let's finish this second pass off. Okay, so you see where Carly's utilizing those runoff tabs at the start and at the finish.